Okay, introduce yourselves, please.
Hey, my name is Festus.
I'm Jennifer.
And how did you guys meet?
Yeah.
Well, we actually met on Match.com.
Yeah.
And Festus had just gotten to Miami as a travel nurse, and I had gotten on Match kind of as a joke. And he was on there looking for a tour guide in Miami. And we connected, and what kind of drew him to me was the fact that I was speaking about God in my profile, and he could relate to that. So I remember his first message to me was, I see we have something in common in that we both put God first. And that's how he opened up the conversation.
Yep. And that's how we met.
That's amazing. Talk about yourself before each other. Like before Festus, Jen, before Jen Festus, like who were you before?
Who was I before? Nowhere near who I am today. That's for sure. She makes me a better person.
Oh.
But before I was kind of and she would say it not a loner. I don't want to say loner. It's a traveler. I was a traveler, and I've always traveled, so I was never. I had no kind of stability. Just kind of moved everywhere, and that was my job. I moved to a different place every 3 months. So it made it to where I couldn't ever really find love because I was always moving from here to there, and I never really had any kind of stability in my life. And when I moved to Miami, even then I was still trying to run away from it. You know, even after I had met her, I was
He
still trying
calls
to
it
get out of here.
traveling. I call it running. He spent years every 3 months running to a new place. That's what I call it, not traveling. But we'll let
But
you have that.
that's who I was before I met Jen. It's just I had no stability really. I just was all over the place, and when I wasn't satisfied at one moment, I'd be gone. It never crossed my mind to wait things out.
So for me, before Festus, I was on this journey of just really trying to find myself in God. So for like 2 years before meeting Festus, I was just focused on grad school. I wasn't dating, and just if I wasn't doing something for school, I was in my Bible and just really trying to establish my relationship with God. And it was during that time that I had made a commitment to God that I wanted to remain celibate until marriage. And so that was the first time in my life that I had made that decision and made that promise to God. So I kind of said, whoever the next person is that I meet, that I date seriously, I want that to be my husband. And so when I met Festus, I was like, okay, God, so when do I tell him that, that I'm on this journey of celibacy and this is off limits until marriage? And so, of course, God kind of showed me to have that conversation on the second date, which was kind of
Yeah.
which was kind of awkward. But I kind of had prepared myself in the car driving to our second date. I kind of had a conversation with God, and I was like, well, I know this will probably be the last time I see him. Soften the blow. I know you're going to take me through this. It was nice to meet him. And I just kind of prepared myself that that was the end. And then when I told him, his response was, you're not going to get rid of me that easy. And I was like, what? I still didn't believe him, and I didn't think I'd ever hear from him again after that. I thought he was just being nice to my face.
Yeah.
But then it just kind of continued from there.
Yeah.
I love that because a lot of women make that decision. You don't hear a lot of men making that decision, but a lot of women make that decision and they wonder, like, how's that going to pan out? Are they actually going to be able to find a mate because they've decided to make that commitment to God? But in your situation, that actually was what allowed God to keep you guys together, I think, because you chose to honor God in that. Festus, how was that for you hearing that Jin was going to be celibate?
It actually wasn't like a huge surprise because that's something God had been speaking to me about also, is that, prior to her, the last three girlfriends I had, all three said the same thing to me.
Wow.
So it wasn't a shock. It wasn't a blow. It's almost like God had prepared me for it, and that maybe that's what he was doing before. So, when I heard it, it was just like, it was nothing to me really. That's why my response was right then and there was, you're not going to get rid of me that easy. But I think, for most men, that's a hard thing to hear. I got lucky in that God had prepared me for it. I can't remember how I reacted the first time I heard something like that, but I think for most men, that's a struggle. That's something that, really think about whenever they hear that. But it's great when you're in a position where that doesn't even bother you.
And I don't think he realizes how much his response impacted me, because for him to say, "You're not going to get rid of me that easy," and then he also said, "I'm not surprised. I kind of figured this would come from you." That's something I had battled with, was like shame and guilt from my past. And like, I had a child at the age of 19. I wasn't married. All of these things. How am I going to sit and tell this man, "Oh, I'm celibate"? He's going to be looking at me like, "But you have a kid," you know? And I was like, and so I felt like I was going to be judged. But no, he didn't even see that. He just simply went to, "I'm not surprised." Like, he saw the new transformed me. Like, he didn't see any of that, even though I had a child and it was clear that I had a past. He didn't see any of that. And so his response really, really, it brought my faith to another level, because I left that day feeling so secure in my obedience and my walk with God, because I never could have imagined that that date would have gone that way. So when it did, I was like, "That's only you, God. There's no way. There's no way." And I had doubts too. Like, I was like, my dating life is over now that I've made this decision. We'll see what happens, but I'm okay being single. I have a child. I have a great life, a good career. If I don't ever get married, I think I'm okay with that. That was kind of where I was. I just wanted to honor God. And so if that's what it took, but I was in that same position where I didn't think that men like him existed. And if they did, they were far away and nowhere near me. And nobody was going to be okay with waiting until marriage.
Wow. That's great.
Especially as good looking as he is.
You guys are a gorgeous couple.
Thank you.
We're praying on the babies. When in your relationship did you consult God about each other? Like, fully seek God? Like, who is this person to me? What is their purpose in my life? Is this a mate?
For me, I guess the part of the story we haven't shared is that we actually ended up breaking up. And then, so it took us a while to get back together. But in that time where we were broken up, basically she got tired of hearing of every 3 months my contract came up and it was whether I was going to leave or not. And I would just struggle with that and I would stay, and she just didn't want to live 3 months at a time anymore. So we ended up breaking up. And in that time is when I really started to speak to God about, one thing she said to me before we broke up was that don't come back to me unless it's a direct word from God for you to do so. Mm-hmm. And that's something that really stuck with me, even though she didn't remember even saying that to me. So, and I've always, I grew up in a Christian home, and, I've always had family and everybody encouraged me to pray for my wife, and and I've always said that prayer, but not really seriously. God, I want a God-fearing woman and all that. But I also wasn't in the time in my life where I was thinking about marriage when I said those prayers. So this time after we were broken up, I started to then, it took a little while, but we were broken up for almost 2 years, maybe a year and a half. And in that time is when I started to pray to God to show me who my wife would be. And I wasn't necessarily praying about her, because we had broken up, and I saw it as, God, I guess that's not who it's supposed to be. But I think that's when I started, praying seriously about who my wife would be. And as things worked out and we started to get closer and closer to each other, that's when I also, began to fast about it, and took it a step further. Okay, if once God started showing me a little bit that it might be her with all the signs that were going on, I started really, just praying and fasting about it. So I guess for me, it started right after we had broken up, maybe a couple months after we had broken up, where I felt like, okay, it's time for me to start praying about who it would be, because I felt something there. I don't know if that was it, but so I made my prayer very general.
Sorry, Jen, I'm gonna let you go because I have some deeper questions for you. But Festus, like you mentioned that you started seeing some signs that it could be her. Like, talk about because a lot of people have a hard time trying to see how do you hear God? How do you seek God for signs about something like this, and what does that even look like? So talk about some things that God showed you that you was able to lead you to believe that this might be your wife.
Okay. Well, I think God speaks to everybody differently, obviously. For me, God usually speaks to me through dreams. At the time, for me, it always changes, but at the time, He speaks to me through dreams. So in that time, as I prayed, it was almost like God took me, and it was a moment where I would see things in my head, or go through a day and relive that day in my dream. So I started to kind of do that with her. So I would maybe have a moment where we were at church or something like that, and God will bring that back to me in a dream. And I'm just like, why are we, I'm broken up with this girl. Why is this girl coming back in my dreams? And, I started seeing small signs like that. So I started praying more about it. And as, time gets closer, my aunt then started saying, I was seeking my aunt for counsel from my aunt, and she was like, you need to really hear from God. She said exact same words that she said, but she didn't know anything about her. She said, you need to really hear from God before you make any moves about whoever it is that you're going to marry. And it's not that you think you heard from God, or you think this is the person, but it's a direct word from God. However you hear God, it's a direct word from God. So for me, that's when I really started praying to God, and just, and fasting. I think I was fasting 3 days. I would fast Thursday, Friday, Saturday of every week for a while. And one of those days would be for the woman I'm supposed to marry. Eventually, it shifted for her. For that one day, shifted to be her. Once I kind of started seeing signs, and now I'm praying that, God, if it's her, please reveal it. Please do this. Please let me see it. And slowly, whether it be at church or be it in around Miami, God started to put us together in the same places. And it's very strange how whether it be at church sometimes, I remember we would sit in the same place, but we were never ever at church together. So I would sit there on the days that she wasn't there. I guess God arranged it that way. And the days that I wasn't there, she'd be sitting there. So one day we both showed up, and I'm like, hey, you're in my seat.
And I was like, this has been my seat since before you were even coming here. And he was like, what?
Yeah. So, small signs like that, or we'd be at church, and I think one time they started playing a song that I wouldn't say it was our song, but it was a song that we recognized and we laughed about all the time. And it wasn't a Christian song or anything like that, but for that to be playing in church while we're sitting right next to each other was very strange. But yeah, I prayed so much about it that as God started to show it to me, it really encouraged me to pray harder. And the advice I had gotten from my aunt to hear from God was the hardest thing in the world, because I think at times I felt like, okay, it's her, and I really want to go ahead and tell her, but I couldn't do it just because of what she had said and what my aunt had said to me. Yeah.
Was it how was it surrendering that to God? Because it sounds like at some points you wanted it, like with you when you want it to be someone so bad, but waiting for that confirmation because you don't want to be out of God's will. How did you learn to kind of release that? God, I want it to be her, but in case it's not her, how did you surrender that?
I think my circumstances made it easier to surrender that. God had taken me through a journey where it was a time where I had actually gotten injured. And that time took me away from everybody for a while and just kind of sat me down, got me in the Word. I couldn't move. So, it was one of those times where God kept me from running by physically keeping me from running.
What were you doing?
Yeah. So in that time, I really got in the Word, and being in the Word so much, it really just made it easier to say, you know what, God, this is all yours. I don't care anymore because I'm at the point where I'm really broken, and whatever you want to happen, it's okay with me because there's nothing else I can do. So that's what I think. I think that time where He sat me down and made me really get closer to Him, that relationship with God, that's what makes it a lot easier to surrender that. And for me, that's what it was.
That's great. Now, Jen, so the whole decision to break up, whose idea was that?
I think
I
it was
almost want to say
mine,
mutual,
but I
but
struggled with it. And so I had kind of made the decision, but then I kind of changed my mind and was talking to him again. And then when I finally like completely made the decision and was like, okay, and because he's such a nice guy that when I broke up with him the first time and then still was trying to be friends with him, of course he still wanted me in his life. So he was like, okay, we're broken up, but I'm going to be friendly to her and we're going to still communicate. We're
well, I
friends,
mean, I think what
whatever.
it was also is just I value friendship so much, and I guess that was different to her, and because of my time here, we didn't have time to really build a friendship or anything. For what she knew, I was only here for 3 months. That's not enough time to build a friendship and then jump into a relationship. So we just jumped into a relationship.
Yeah, we skipped the friendship
exactly.
part, and I think that was
Yeah.
that was a big piece that we missed in the beginning.
Yeah. So when we broke up, I think that's I guess it was her choice to break up, but when we did, I wasn't too hurt by it because I felt like I still, if she was a friend of mine, it's funny, if she was a friend of mine, I would have felt it more. And so that's something that we have to work on now, is build a friendship. So breaking up really helped us to then go backwards and build that friendship.
Although during that 2 years, we didn't really
talk, but every once in a while
talk.
she'd send me a message or something, I'm praying for you, and and it was always on point, and like I would be going through something and I get a random message from her, I'm praying for you. It's very timely. I almost felt like she was watching me or something.
But it was a really challenging decision because I was so sure, because I had prayed so much before that, even going on that first date with him. So, and then his response when I told him that I was waiting till marriage, like all of those things, it just seemed so perfect, and it seemed like like it was God answering my prayers and bringing this person into my life. So for me to then come to a decision where, okay, maybe I was wrong, maybe I didn't hear God right, maybe this isn't the person, and I need to let this go, like that was really, really hard. I'm like, okay, I prayed that the next person would be my husband, and I did things your way, God. Like for the first time in my life, I surrendered my dating relationships to you, and I did this your way, and it didn't work out. And I was devastated, and it was really, really hard. But I knew that that continuing to every 3 months wonder if he's still going to be around, I couldn't deal with that turmoil. So I think that pain more than anything is what made me let go. I'm not going to say that God showed me to end it, because that wasn't clear. There was a lot of confusion. I wasn't sure if I was doing the right thing. And so it was really hard. So I think it was the pain of not knowing if he was still going to be around and all of that, that led me to just end it. And so I did, during that 2 years that we were broken up, I did at moments question if I made the decision to end it out of my own will, and if that was something that I wasn't supposed to have done. And now I lost something that, was a blessing from God, because I couldn't wait and be patient. Because even though he kept saying he was going to leave every 3 months, I still it's like God was giving me this peace that he wasn't going anywhere. But I still battled with it. And so it's like, I got to a point where I was like, maybe I should have just rested in God and continued to just go on the journey with him, because God was going to keep him around. But now I see how much we both grew spiritually during that time apart. Mm-hmm. And I don't think we would have gotten to the place we needed to be. And ultimately, I think it would have taken us longer to get to marriage, even with the 2-year breakup. I think it would have taken us longer to get to marriage, because we both loved God when we met each other, but that relationship, that spiritual maturity, and the ability of him to be the head of our household spiritually and all of that, that wasn't my ability to submit and allow him, because I've always been a very type A, controlling, running the show type of person. And he is, he's the opposite, the complete opposite. And so if I wanted to take the lead, he would have allowed it. And that's not where we needed to have a successful marriage. So I think it would have taken us a really long time to get there. But once we broke up, during that time, God took us both on a journey. And once I got over that initial anger of, okay, God, I did things your way and it didn't work out and all of that, I began to really connect with God again. And I actually did this fast